Thank you, Charles. My colleagues from the American Federation of Teachers and members of the Ball State Teachers College, AAUP, membership and friends. It's a real privilege to be here, to be able to talk to you about the American Federation of Teachers and our efforts to bring education in America to the forefront in our society. And I was thinking, and I mentioned as we came in, Charles was telling you about having been in school here in 1942. Quite a few years before, I played football and baseball out here on the athletic field. I was a member of the Franklin College team at that time. I'm a Hoosier also from southern Indiana, so it's nice to get back home. But I have an opportunity to talk to teachers at all times, and I always want to talk to our college and university faculty people for many reasons, particularly because we represent the American Federation of Teachers, which is affiliated with the AFL-CIO. In other words, we are the labor affiliate, and we want you to see us. We want you to hear us, so that you will begin to understand quite shortly that we do not have horns, as sometimes you are led to believe. And also I want to be just as humble and say to you, neither do we have wings. But we are teachers. I am on leave from my teaching position as a science teacher in the Lakeview High School in Chicago. And all of our membership, all of our officers, our executive council, are classroom teachers, because we speak for the classroom teacher. And this is of importance to us. And the first important thing that we're trying to do is to place emphasis upon the teacher. Whether you call that teacher a teacher in the primary, elementary, secondary, junior high school, junior college, or whether you call him an instructor, an assistant instructor, an associate instructor, or a full professor, we still consider these people as teachers. And what we need in America, more than anything else, is re-emphasizing the importance of teachers. And I have walked here through this campus just a little bit, and I see here what I see everywhere across the country, whether it's on the East Coast where I'll be tomorrow in Boston, or whether it's in California, Hawaii, or Alaska. There seems to be no difficulty in securing funds for buildings, but there is tremendous difficulty in getting money to provide the wherewithal to give teachers a decent salary so they can live a respectable life and have the dignity of the community in which they live. And this is what we in the F.A.T. are struggling and striving for, because we say repeatedly over and over and over that bricks and mortar and a good paint job do not of themselves make a school, a college, or a university, but that it is the teachers and the faculty in that school that determine whether or not you have a mediocre or a superior school system. But now our opposition to this kind of philosophy says, but teachers should be dedicated people, and the teacher should not be concerned with such menial things as money. And by and large, our teachers have accepted this kind of philosophy. And why? No one else has. Doctors and lawyers, to whom we are compared in a profession, do not. And they are respected in their communities because of the fact that they make a lot of money. The teachers are to be dedicated. Now we've been trying our very level best to overcome this misconception. And of course, every time that you deal with money, you deal with difficult problems. I want to spend a few minutes of my time in bringing to your attention why we consider education is so important in our society. The American Federation of Teachers has always maintained that all teachers are sincerely interested in the students they teach. Our labor affiliation does not segment the AFT. Well, they said, well, if you belong to the AFT, you are then a part of labor, and you could not be a good teacher because you would emphasize labor to the exclusion of everything else. And this is as erroneous as to say that someone who belongs to a political party or who belongs to a sectarian religion could not be a good teacher. The American Federation of Teachers further maintains that a teacher is only half a teacher unless that teacher understands the social, the economic, and the political issues which are shaping the destinies of the nation in which you live and in which the students you teach are going to live. And what are a few of these things? Number one, the population of the United States is about 185 million today. It has been estimated that it increases the rate of 4 million a year, with a big rise in family units about 1965. This means a large increase in teenagers, a large increase in young adults, a large increase in people 65 and over, but a shrinkage in the 30 to the 50 age group. Now, as college instructors, let's see what that does to you. If we have a large increase in teenagers and a large increase in young adults, you're going to have a large increase in student population. And the reason that college people have not been interested in organizing into the American Federation of Teachers, as have our elementary and secondary teachers, is because up till now you have not been plagued with the same problems of overcrowding and discrimination and being pushed around that our other teachers have had to endure and have had to fight for. But they're coming, and you're going to be faced with the very same problems. And some of our college people say to me, well, Mr. Magel, you don't do the same thing. You don't do as much for our college people as you do for your elementary and high school people. Of course not, because you haven't organized. But we can do exactly the same and more for you as we have done for our elementary and high school people when you organize. We couldn't do anything for the elementary or the high school people until they organized. And then, of course, we can do things for them. Why? Because of a basic concept. And here is a basic concept that our university people, college and university people, have not understood. This is a new world that we're living in. You could almost say it is a collectivist world. What you accomplish today, you accomplish only when you are unified. You cannot accomplish anything, or at least very little, on an individual basis. But as college and university teachers and instructors and professors, you have been, more than any other group in American society, individualists. And to learn. And this is what we have, the most that we have to do. And I've talked to our president in New York since our collective bargaining election in New York, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have taken in thousands of teachers. They've come into our union. They are union members, but they are not yet unionized because they do not understand. And our big job is, once we get them in, to unionize them. And what does that mean? That means to teach them how to work together collectively, to meet in a body, to discuss in open forum the issues that are before them, to come to a decision, and then for everybody to get behind that decision and make sure that it becomes effective. This is a big difference. Now, we've had many scientific events that have occurred the last several years. The Telstar broadcast that went to Europe and then back from Europe to the United States. And we're going to have the Olympic Games in 1964 broadcast by Telstar to this country. Down to Cape Canaveral tomorrow morning, one of our satellites is planning to stay up, go around the Earth 6 times. John Glenn went around in a very phenomenal and exciting event. But these events are only spotlights foreshadowing the future. The world belongs to the world that we're in is without precedent. A new world of creativity, optimism, and challenge. Space travel at fantastic speed. I was telling Charlie about coming over here. It took us 5 hours to drive down here. A jet would come down here in 10 minutes. And John Glenn would travel this same distance in about 5 seconds. The speed. Controlled heat will reach 1 million degrees. Power and water from 1,000 uses. Washing machines called sonic washers will make use of sound waves to agitate the water so that they will not save your clothes. Thermoelectric refrigerators and freezers operating without the use of moving parts. Remote control, push-button stoves and ovens. And right now, by 1965, all the automobile companies will have an automobile on the market which will have no smog, so that Los Angeles particularly will have no more smog, but all of us will be able to breathe free air again. And what they're going to do is make the engine so perfect that it will use all of the energy in gasoline, and what a saving and what a waste it's been that we haven't had this before. It's just a shame that a gallon of gasoline which has enough power to go 200 miles can only go about 10 or 12 or 15 at the most, unless you've got a Volkswagen, then you go 25. But these will all happen. Now, immediately we become conscious of the fact that we're living in an extremely complex society and a more complex world. Our first recognition must be that in a complex society we find no simple answers. Our first recognition is that if we have no simple answers, that there must be complex answers. It becomes imperative, therefore, that we educate all people, as well as ourselves, to understand the complexities of our lives and the issues which affect us. The future belongs to those who learn. As teachers, we must constantly keep in mind the basic fact that ideas and attitudes of the past are quite inadequate for today. In fact, yesterday's ideas may be obsolete tomorrow, and most surely will be. Our task is not to make our students think the way we do, the way we have done. It is rather to make them think, and to arrive at their judgments in the light of abiding standards. And in so doing, we must understand that the status quo stultifies and stagnates the spirit. What am I saying then? I am saying that as teachers we must take a new look at ourselves and a life we live in, because all of this, the travel has brought us closer to all the peoples of the world. Scientific advancements have put thousands of people out of work, and we'll put more of them. I consider most of you can at your telephone and dial 77 million telephone numbers. A great accomplishment, but it has put thousands of telephone operators out of work. How do you teach then? What do you teach? Do you teach marketable skills in your classes? What about the young people that are before you? Since this marketable skill may be of short duration, then what do you teach? Then the job is to teach them to be able to take what you have given them and adjust it to the new world. This is something different. Now, why is this so important to us? I was in Boston. I came from Boston to New York, and I stopped in New York and flew by jet to St. Louis to meet with the Granite City, Illinois teachers who were working with their board, meeting with their board for setting up collective bargaining procedures. And I picked up on September the 10th the New York World Telegram. I hold it before you so you can see, because the headline is so distinguished. Big Red Threat, Education. And there are 4 subtitles. Number 1, illiteracy is now a thing of the past in the Soviet Union. And then we remember that in 1945, a representative of the United States government in the Kremlin was told, "We will fight you on the economic front. We will meet you in the propaganda arena. We will battle you on the battlefields of the world if we have to. But we will defeat you in the classrooms of our schools." And it was a laughing matter to us then, because 80% of the Russian people were illiterate. 1945, 80%, 1962, no illiteracy. Now, this article is not written by Mr. Khrushchev or Gromyko. This is written by William S. Benton, former Assistant Secretary of State, former Senator from Connecticut, who spent 7 months in Russia studying the educational system. Number 2, every child goes to school 6 days a week, 10 months a year. Number 3, 7 new universities have been built in the last 7 years in Russia. How many have we built? Oh, we've expanded ours, but how many new ones have we built? And number 4, the Russians pay the cost of college for all who can qualify. We ought to think about that a little bit. And while we're thinking about it, on 21st of September, I picked up a Chicago paper and I found 4 headlines that I thought were significant, and I just took the headlines and I am showing them to you here. Headline number 1, down UN plane in the Congo. Headline number 2, House approves Farm Bill. Headline number 3, crowd waits for Negro in Mississippi. Headline number 4, of minor importance in this publication, Kennedy College Aid Program defeated. But I just showed you that in Russia, everyone who qualifies is given opportunity to go to college. But even a most inadequate college aid bill was defeated in the United States. And Ed Morgan, the reporter for the AFL-CIO, states definitely that the National Education Association's efforts were responsible for defeating this measure. But even if that passed, it was so inadequate as to be almost of no value. Now, what do we do? Who can change the course of events in America? The teachers can do it. Every college instructor, every college professor, every high school, every elementary teacher, if they march, can do it. We are considered the intellectuals. But our voice has been stilled, and the voice of the college people have been stilled. Don't tell me that there are not in the colleges of the United States and in the universities many great men and women, teachers and instructors, as competent and as capable as we've ever had before. But I dare say there isn't a one of you who can name 25 outstanding college or university people today. And yet, when I was in school, quite a few years ago, the names were prominent and evident. Now why? Because there has been an influence to keep the voice of the college and university instructor silent. And this is the tragedy of American education, and this is the tragedy of our college and university education. Now, it can be remedied. It can be remedied. And we in the AFT have the answer. It is by collective action. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean that you as people, that you as teachers, you as instructors, operate your own organization. Let me talk to you about New York for a little bit. New York City has 43,000 teachers, which include about 5,000 junior college and college teachers, who are also all part of the Board of Education of the City of New York. They had 67 different organizations, and that was fine. That's where the politicians liked it. Because therefore nobody had power and voice. But our federation, with our help, and that of the AFL-CIO, decided to ask for a collective bargaining election. They wanted to find out who should represent the teachers, and they wanted to have one bargaining agent. Well, all the troubles, I could stand here and talk to you tomorrow morning about the troubles we had. The opposition immediately met. But finally, the attorney ruled that this was possible, they could do it. And then on last December, we had an election. Now, when the election was finally decreed in June, first thing the board did, they said, well, we don't know that teachers want to have collective bargaining. Therefore, we'll have an election to determine whether or not the teachers want it. So, the ballots went out, do you want to have an election to find out whether you want collective bargaining? And the teachers voted yes, they want collective bargaining. Now our opposition, the National Education Association, came in and opposed. They told the teachers to vote no. We don't want collective bargaining. And in spite of that, we won it. Because the teachers had come to a point where they were determined they were going to do something for themselves. Immediately then, we asked to be put on the ballot, United Federation of Teachers of New York. Then the NEA came around and said, all right, then we want on the ballot. Before they said we do not want collective bargaining. Then they said they want on the ballot to be named the agent. And they organized the groups into what they call the Teachers Bargaining Organization. And so they were on the ballot. The United Federation of Teachers, the Teachers Bargaining Organization. Election was held in December. The votes were 20,000 for the UFT and 9,000 for the NEA. Therefore, our organization was declared the collective bargaining agent. We immediately set up a committee of teachers from the organization. This body met with the Board of Education. Now, I want to give you this because this is pertinent in the whole structure here. This group of teachers met with the Board of Education. They did not meet with the superintendent because we in the AFT consider the superintendent and we consider the president of your university as the agent of management and therefore has no right and no business sitting in your meetings or sitting on the same side of the table trying to help you and negotiate. The superintendent and the Board of Education were over here, the teachers were here, and they negotiated. Now, they negotiated a contract. I have a copy of that contract here. It is the first contract of this magnitude that has ever been approved. The teachers voted on it just yesterday. The votes came out, should be announced tonight. This contract contains 7.5 pages. These are the rules and regulations by which the teachers of the Board of Education in New York will operate hereafter. They spell out fair practices, salaries, working conditions. Now, it was interesting to everyone who saw this that the first thing that they discussed and negotiated were not salaries, but working conditions. And out of that came 34 different items of working conditions. Number one, elementary teachers would have one free preparation period in all schools. In the difficult schools, they would have 2 preparation periods. Number 3, every teacher would have a 55-minute duty-free lunch period. Now, we have been fighting this thing for years. In 1956, I asked our State Federation to introduce legislation in this effect. 22 states introduced it. Only in Illinois, where we called it the right to eat law, we were able to get it passed. And may I tell you that this very day, 300,000 teachers in the United States went to school this morning at 8 o'clock or 8:30 and were not permitted to leave their rooms until 3 or 4, not even to go to the washroom. What barbarism do we perpetrate here? And yet we have difficulty. And I'll tell you one more thing. Only the American Federation of Teachers supports this idea. Not a single other organization. In fact, all the other organizations oppose it everywhere we've gone. So we got 55 minutes duty-free lunch period. Vocational shop teachers had 6 classes. They only have 5 now. Playground duties, cafeteria duties, hall guard duties, all these excessive records they have to keep, no more. What does this do? This puts the teacher back in the classroom to do the job that they are being trained, which you were training them for, and for which they're being paid. And this is one of our basic premises. One of the reasons Johnny can't read or write is because the teacher has 40 and 50 in a class, and records, and playground, and hall guard, and all the rest of these things. This is why. Now, also, they have eliminated the record keeping. The Board of Education is hiring people to do this. Now, if you're teaching prospective teachers, these are some of the things that you should be talking to them about. Can't teach otherwise. It was only thereafter that they began to talk about salaries. And here's where they had a little trouble. Because the mayor of New York and the governor of New York, one of whom is a Democrat, the other is a Republican, became involved in a feud. And the mayor said, the governor won't give us the money. The governor said, the mayor's got it. And the teachers were caught in this political squeeze, of which there is nothing more frustrating, nor could they do much about it. And they called a one-day work stoppage. A regrettable event, but an event that had to be taken at this particular time. And the board issued an injunction, and one day they were out, and the next day they had to be back by an injunctive order. Then the governor sent $33 million. Now I say to you, if he had it the day after the strike, he sure as the world had it the day before. 3 days. You don't find $33 million. He must be in New York. But it was only because the teachers took effective action that this happened. Now, how'd they do it? They're working on this idea, this issue of collective bargaining. Now our opposition, the National Education Association, opposes collective bargaining, and they support collective negotiations. They call it professional negotiations, so as they get put in that word professionalism to kind of a slam at us. So now what does that mean? What's the difference? Here's a basic fundamental difference. In our procedure, the teachers secure collective bargaining. The teachers elect the committee that represents them. That teachers' committee then meets with not the superintendent, but the Board of Education, which is the final authority. What is the other plan? Professional negotiations. The teachers may select a body of their own to represent them, but then that body meets with the administration. It meets with the superintendent. And the procedure is well known. The superintendent, the administration sets up all kinds of roadblocks. They set up their own requirements and restrictives. And this can't be done, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't do this. And finally, an innocuous statement is drawn up in high-flowing terms and sent to the board as the request of the teachers. Now, how similar is that to what you are doing? I want to call this to your attention. There has been a prejudice developed throughout the United States towards teachers belonging to a teachers' union. Many of those who do not join a teachers' union do so more from prejudice than from rational judgment. I am speaking of the prejudice so frequently stated that the ranks of labor are an unfit place for anyone in the professions, including the teaching profession. This prejudice, perhaps, has been one of the largest contributing factors to the professor's isolation from the labor movement. They say, well, it's all right for a plumber to be a member of the AFL-CIO. It's all right for a machinist to be a member of the AFL-CIO. But it isn't all right for a teacher or a professor. Because, after all, they are professional. Now, what does that mean, professional mean? Accepting a term that gives you some feeling of dignity that you don't have. But they forget to state to you that also in the AFL-CIO, every single actor, every single radio performer, every single TV performer, everybody has anything to do with radio or TV, every movie actor, every opera singer, every musician of any kind, any kind, symphonic, any orchestra, band, or anything, are all members of the AFL-CIO. And these are the professional groups. And certainly we teachers could be proud to be a part of that group. I believe that many in the teaching profession are beginning to realize that the most distinctive and important mark of the professional person is his right to determine the standards of his craft and to specify the conditions under which he can achieve these standards. I would like to expand this concept of the professional program and the professional person. The prejudice against organizations exists, I believe, because of a double meaning that is frequently used and given to the concept of the professional person. One of the meanings stems from an earlier period when people spoke of the professions of ministry, law, medicine, and teaching. They were the professions because they were the crafts requiring a college degree, the crafts requiring higher education. However, there is another familiar way in which we talk about the professional person. We talk about the old pro, the man who can deliver, the one who knows his craft and who is an experienced practitioner of it. And in turn, we contrast him with the amateur, the immature practitioner. The dignity that comes from being a real professional person, the pride that comes from being the master of one's own craft, is the traditional legacy of the true professional person. But this dignity and pride are not the exclusive possessions of men who acquire their knowledge and skills through higher education. It is a professionalism that professors and men of labor fundamentally share together. The distinction which I am trying to make is one that mirrors the division between men motivated by achievement and those motivated by ambition. Generally speaking, men motivated by ambition measure their success too frequently in terms of the power they acquire. To stand still becomes failure. Movement from one position to another takes on the color of the necessity, and the direction of success is movement generally towards increased power. On the other hand, again, speaking generally, men motivated by achievement tend to measure their success by the skill and knowledge they acquire. They do not worry about moving from one position to another. They choose a craft, and the direction of their success is movement towards increased mastery of their craft. Achievement is the chief motivation of those who choose the life of professionalism. Thus, I think it can be said that the primary division in our society is not between the professional and the worker. It is more fundamentally between management and professionalism, or management and the worker. Further, it is not between economic classes, but between the moral commitment of individuals. A full understanding of the labor movement should take into account its role with regard to this division. Such understanding should take into account labor's full understanding and sympathy with efforts to maintain or restore dignity to professionalism in its broadest concept. We fundamentally believe that honor should go to men of achievement as well as men of ambition. This attempt to establish a balance of dignity is as important to labor's historic purpose as its attempt to establish a balance of earnings. The affiliation of you professors and instructors with the labor movement would mark you as an event of tremendous importance in our historic goals of restoring and maintaining a balance of dignity for the individual. This is an act of importance not to just a special interest group. It is an act of importance to our whole society. It is an act towards healing the wound of class division in our body politic. Man is a whole person in the search for dignity and honor. The tendency is clearly to disrupt this unity within the individual when we encourage the division between management and professionalism. Now repeat that. Man is a whole person in his search for dignity and honor. The tendency is clearly to disrupt this unity within the individual when we encourage the division between management and professionalism. I'm sure you will find that as you work with the members of the Indiana Federation of Teachers, or with the Vice President here, or any of us, your closest labor affiliates, that they are intelligent men and women who believe they should help make educational policy, but who, because of the dedication to their professionalism, do not want to see their crafts hurt or rendered in any way less effective as a result of undue interference on the part of managers or administrators. The motivating force for maintaining a craft should and must come from the professional and not from the manager. It is too often the case that managers and administrators tend to usurp power over directing the professionalism of a craft that can only lead to the undermining of the true professional in the field of teaching. The extent to which this may be the case in the state college is a matter of serious concern, not only to the teaching profession, but to our entire free society. Whether such interference with professionalism has exceeded all bounds of responsibility for good administration, it is time that action is taken to restore balance. Where the balance has been lost, it must be restored. Where balance is threatened, it must be preserved. There are perhaps two ways of maintaining this balance. One of them is through faculty senate in individual colleges. The other, perhaps, through organization for collective negotiation, collective bargaining, and action. They are not mutually exclusive. Let us speak to the Senate way first, because this is one that you will understand. Although a state college system has been established, I don't think anyone advocates that the individuality of the separate college should be sacrificed to the system. Higher education, to a large extent, is an interplay between scholars that give a college a personality. It is not a cut and dried affair, so to speak, and educational institutions should be a reflection of these personalities. colleges should respect and reflect and encourage the development of the faculty's personality. This can be done, but only if the faculty is given some recognition in the determination of their curriculum and its emphasis, the administrative structure, the delegation of decisions concerning hiring, retention, tenure, and promotion to proper areas within the college and other related matters. A college or university is frequently referred to as a community of scholars. This is a good phrase, but no one in the teaching profession needs to be told how easy it is for this high-sounding concept to be turned into a regiment under command. One of the greatest threats to higher education today in its rapid expansion is indeed the threat of regimentation. In my experience, I have become concerned with the relatively small role the faculty frequently plays while becoming more appreciative of the role they ought to play. I can assure you that the labor movement will always support efforts to maintain the honor and dignity of professionals, for the professional in the field of education as well as in other crafts. The Higher Education Master Plan adopted earlier this year, I believe, reflects the recognition of this situation. In this latter respect, the Master Plan offers no assurances. You in this school system have a Senate. You've established a Senate. But this Senate is not a body that negotiates with the administrative heads of this institution. This Senate is a body that makes the administrative head of the institution a part of the Senate. Now, this is the difference. It's a fundamental difference between the FAT and the NEA and the FAT and what is happening in most of our colleges and universities. It makes no difference how democratic you appear to be. It makes little difference how much freedom you seem to have. If that superintendent or that school administrator or that president is sitting there on that board, his judgment and his wishes and his desires are bound to have its effect. Now, I had a very good illustration of that, never very long ago. I was over in Iowa, meeting with our teachers there. They were meeting with the Board of Education, trying to negotiate a salary contract, an increase in salaries. The superintendent, who was a rather nice man, tried to help the teachers. And finally, one of the board members got up and he said, "Now, Mr. Board President, I want to know here and now whose side the superintendent is on." Well, that superintendent knew exactly whose side he was on thereafter. You can just bet your life. And so here is the difference. This is the fundamental difference. This is what we're proposing. This is what we're working for. Now, what's worked for locals in other institutions will work for you. But you must take the initiative. You must work towards that initiative. You must promote your own interests. You must organize, and as an organization, think what power you would have if you organized the entire faculty into one unit where you sat down in a meeting and discussed the things that you want in your institution in the way of salaries, in the way of curricula, in the way of working additions and improvements. Would be a great thing. But most of all, it would restore to you the academic freedom that you do not now have. This is why you cannot name 25, much less 50, outstanding, distinguished college people today, because they have been stripped of their academic freedom. How long would you last in this institution if you began to speak about certain ideas that are contrary to the concepts in certain areas of this institution? But if you were a representative of the Muncie State Teachers College Federation of Teachers, and were speaking as representative of that body, then you would have power. Then you would have force. Then you would be able to go down to to Indianapolis. Got the wrong state here. You'll be able to go down to Indianapolis. I've been there many times, and Charlie's been there, more of them been there. Very few times is the teacher's point of view presented to those legislators. Very few times. That's why it's so difficult to get money for teachers. Oh yes, buildings, because there's money in construction, contractors and builders and building supply people. They make money, and so they're down there. They want them, and we'll get them. And of course, a building is a piece of property that has material value, but as a teacher, you don't have that. But the main point is that there's nobody there to speak for the teacher. But if you were organized in the whole state, teachers' colleges, you would have a voice. And you would go down, immediately you would have the support of the Indiana Federation of Labor. And it would give you immediate support. And you would have the support of all of our other locals throughout the state. And we would give you help and assistance. This is important. And this brings me to another point that is important. We agree that political activity has no part in the classroom. Yet if our democracy is to work, politics must be taught there. Now, on this campus, this may be heresy, but this is what we've got to come to eventually. We agree that teachers who are active in politics should act in a manner that reflects credit to our profession. Beyond that, we cannot go. But teachers are precisely the people who are needed in politics, local, state, and national. The idealism that comes natural to people is exactly what this country needs. Their experience and knowledge of our institutions must be injected into our democratic practices. The most valuable leaders of our country today are those who have been former teachers. This again is in part a part of the program and policy of the AFL-CIO. If this is contrary to what you have had as a concept of the labor movement, then this is also one of those misconceptions that has been told you that all the people in labor are told they have to do this and they have to do that. The labor movement, by and large, is the most democratic of all organizations in the United States. This isn't true in every segment of the labor movement, but it is true by and large, as I said. And so, I compliment you for being teachers in this American society. I compliment you in this period in our history for being teachers, because this is the greatest period in our lives. And you cannot teach history without realizing that this year of 1962 is the greatest year in the whole history of the world. And to be a part of that, and to be able to try to help our young people prepare themselves to live in the unpredictable world of 1985 is a great challenge. And it dignifies the teacher and makes him a much more important person. Opportunists, special interest propagandists, frightened extroverts are unreliable spokesmen for sound educational programs. And isn't that what's happened in so many areas? Our future does not lie in a retreat to lesser ideals. It lies in the enrichment and invigoration of what is already ours. We must improve teaching of math and science, but we must not revert to single pattern courses. The satellite and the moon rocket is not an all-compelling force for producing engineers and scientists by the thousands. Not one student out of 100 can become an outstanding engineer or scientist. A genius may destroy the world someday. For hundreds of years, average people in average places have been learning the world. Most Americans will still want their children to learn something about a lot of things. to acquire cultural polish, good manners, good sportsmanship, and fellowship. Things that will do them some good throughout their lives. Now more than ever, we need solid citizens to run our cities, our towns, our schools, our churches, our business, and our government. And we can only do it by acting in democratic fashion. A man stepped out on the street and he saw a car going down. There was no one behind the wheel, so he ran out and he jumped behind the wheel and slammed on the brakes and stopped the car. And he was kind of proud of himself and looked out and there was a man standing there. And he said to the man, "I put the brake on and stopped the car." The man said, "Yes, I know. I was pushing." There are two kinds of people in the world: those who slam on the brakes to stop the wheels of progress, and those who push to make progress possible. Teachers can be in the forefront in making this progress possible and preserving our American society and our democracy so that the peoples of the world will understand and also come to realize its benefits. It's been a real pleasure to be here to greet all of my friends from our other locals, from Annapolis, from Anderson, and Charlie here, and from our local here, Thornberry, and to all of you who are instructors here. My compliments to you. You have a great opportunity as teachers to do America a great service. And so stand tall and proud, and be proud to be a teacher.